Ships and planes have vanished here for over a century without a single confirmed wreck ever found. No storm, no signal, no debris, nothing. A research librarian with no ship, no plane, and no ocean training decided to check the old files instead. He was not an investigator. He was not a scientist. He just started reading paperwork nobody else had bothered to open. What he found inside those old records changed everything. Where this patch of ocean even is. The Bermuda Triangle is not an official place. No government, no map agency, and no ocean authority has ever agreed on its exact borders. Most versions draw a rough triangle connecting Miami in Florida, the island of Bermuda, and San Juan in Puerto Rico. Depending on which author drew the map, the total area ranges from about 500,000 square miles all the way up to 1.5 million square miles, which is a massive difference for a place supposedly defined by fixed borders. The United States Board on Geographic Names does not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a real location at all. This is one of the busiest stretches of ocean on the planet, packed with cargo ships, cruise liners, private boats, and commercial airplanes crossing it every single day without incident. The zone also overlaps with the Sargasso Sea, an older and equally strange-sounding patch of ocean that sailors had been telling stories about since long before anyone coined the word triangle. Before any of that naming happened, though, two real disasters gave the legend its first real believers, starting with a training flight that never made it home. The flight that never came back. On December 5th, 1945, 5 Grumman Avenger bombers took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale on a routine training run. 14 men were on board. Their mission, nicknamed Flight 19, was simple. Fly east, drop practice bombs at a spot called Hen and Chicken Shoals, turn north over Grand Bahama Island, then turn back southwest to base. It was supposed to take under 3 hours. About 90 minutes in, radio operators picked up confusing chatter. One student pilot asked another for a compass reading and got the answer, "I do not know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn." The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, then radioed that both of his compasses had failed and that he believed he was somewhere over the Florida Keys, flying the wrong direction entirely. Taylor had over 2,500 flying hours and had served in combat, so his confusion baffled everyone listening. As the weather turned worse and fuel ran low, the last message anyone heard was an order for the planes to stay together and prepare to ditch in the ocean. A rescue plane sent out that evening. A PBM Mariner carrying 13 more men also vanished within 20 minutes of takeoff, most likely destroyed by a mid-air fuel vapor explosion, a known problem with that aircraft type. 6 planes and 27 men were gone, despite one of the largest air and sea searches in history, covering over 300,000 square miles. Not one piece of wreckage was ever recovered. A Navy board investigated and initially blamed pilot error, then quietly changed the official reason to causes unknown, so as not to place full blame on a dead man. That single unresolved sentence, causes unknown, ended up doing more to build a myth than almost anything else that happened that day. The ship that vanished without a word, 27 years earlier, in March 1918, an even bigger disaster had already happened in the same general stretch of ocean, though almost nobody connected the two events until decades later. The USS Cyclops, a massive 540-foot Navy collier used to haul coal and ore, left Barbados bound for Baltimore, carrying 309 men and roughly 11,000 tons of manganese ore. She never sent a distress call. She never arrived. No wreckage, no bodies, no lifeboats, nothing was ever found. To this day, it remains the largest loss of life in United States Navy history from a cause other than combat. Investigators at the time considered several explanations. A German submarine attack was suspected since the country was at war. but German naval records checked after the war showed no submarines anywhere near the area that week. Other theories pointed to the ship's cargo. Manganese ore is extremely dense, and if packed unevenly, it can place enormous stress on a ship's frame, especially since the Cyclops was also sailing with one engine disabled due to a cracked cylinder. A sudden storm hitting an overloaded, underpowered ship could explain a fast sinking with no time to send a signal or launch lifeboats. To make matters stranger, two sister ships built to the same design as the Cyclops, named Proteus and Nereus, also disappeared decades later during World War II, sailing similar Atlantic routes while carrying similar heavy ore cargo. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Losing one huge ship without a trace was already the kind of story that sticks in people's memory for a century, but it would take a wave of new authors decades later to start gluing these separate tragedies together into a single unified mystery. How a few writers built a legend out of scattered tragedies. The actual term Bermuda Triangle did not exist until 1964, when writer Vincent Gaddis used it in a magazine article for Argosy, later expanding it into a full book. Gaddis linked Flight 19, the Cyclops, and several other disappearances together for the first time, suggesting a shared, unexplained pattern. 10 years later, author Charles Berlitz took the idea much further in his 1974 bestseller, simply titled The Bermuda Triangle, adding theories involving the lost city of Atlantis, secret energy fields, and other planets. The book sold millions of copies and turned a handful of loosely connected sea disasters into a full-blown cultural phenomenon, complete with documentaries, television specials, and countless follow-up books repeating the same claims. Many of these writers borrowed heavily from each other rather than checking original sources, which meant small errors and outright fabrications got copied forward book after book, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Some listed disappearances that happened hundreds of miles outside the triangle's own borders. Others described calm weather conditions during storms that were fully documented in newspapers at the time. One writer even placed a ship in the wrong ocean entirely, describing an Atlantic loss for a ship that had actually gone down near a Pacific port with the same name. By the mid-1970s, the legend had grown so large and so profitable that almost nobody had bothered to check whether the individual stories were even true. That job eventually fell to a research librarian who never expected to spend years chasing down the answer. The librarian who took the myth apart, piece by piece. Larry Cushay worked as a research librarian at Arizona State University in the early 1970s, and he kept getting asked by students to help find information on the Bermuda Triangle for their papers. Curious, he and a colleague started collecting everything they could find, writing letters to the Coast Guard, the Air Force, and Lloyd's of London, the famous insurance market, requesting original accident reports rather than relying on second-hand retellings. What he found surprised him. Case after case fell apart under basic fact-checking. A yacht reported missing without explanation had actually been located weeks later, its crew alive and completely unaware anyone had been searching for them. A plane described as vanishing mysteriously had, according to hundreds of eyewitnesses at the time, actually crashed into the ocean near Daytona Beach in plain sight. Storms that popular authors described as calm weather were confirmed by official meteorological records to have been full-blown tropical systems at the time of the sinking. Cushay published his findings in 1975 in a book called The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved, walking through dozens of famous cases one at a time and showing that most were either exaggerated, misreported, or simply happened outside the triangle's boundaries altogether. His conclusion was blunt. He called the entire legend a manufactured mystery, built from sloppy research, copied errors, and a public appetite for stories more exciting than the truth. Cush's research effectively answered the biggest question hanging over the whole legend, but the official government agencies that actually patrol these waters had already been saying something remarkably similar for years. What the people who actually work there have always said. The United States Coast Guard, the branch of the military responsible for search and rescue in this exact stretch of ocean, has stated for decades that it does not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as an area of unusual danger and does not track it as a separate category in its records. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA, puts it just as plainly, stating there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency there than in any other large, well-traveled area of ocean. The U.S. Navy has said much the same thing, pointing to natural causes and human error rather than anything supernatural. Perhaps the most convincing evidence of all comes from an unexpected source. Lloyd's of London, one of the world's oldest and most cautious insurance markets, was asked directly during a 1992 television investigation whether it charged higher premiums for ships crossing the triangle, since insurers are usually the first to notice a genuinely dangerous stretch of water. Lloyd's confirmed it charges no extra premium at all for vessels passing through the area because its own claims records show no unusual pattern of losses there. A 2013 study ranking the most dangerous waters in the world for shipping did not include the Bermuda Triangle at all. If none of these official bodies see anything unusual happening, the next logical question becomes, what actually was sinking all those ships and bringing down those planes in the first place? The ordinary explanations that cover most of the cases, weather turns out to explain a huge share of what happened. The region sits directly in the path of the Gulf Stream, a powerful warm ocean current that can produce sudden, violent changes in weather within a very short distance, catching sailors off guard even with modern forecasting. Hurricanes and tropical storms regularly move through this same corridor, and before satellite tracking existed, ships and small planes had almost no warning before conditions turned deadly. Oceanographer Simon Boxall from the University of Southampton has pointed to another factor: rogue waves. When storm systems approaching from different directions collide in this part of the Atlantic, they can combine to create waves reportedly reaching close to 100 feet, more than capable of overwhelming even a large, well-built ship almost instantly, and leaving no time to send a distress call. Human error plays a massive role too. Flight 19's own case shows an experienced pilot becoming completely disoriented after equipment failure, a mistake that can happen to anyone regardless of skill level. There is even a real documented compass quirk in the region. In certain parts of the Bermuda Triangle, a magnetic compass can point toward true north rather than magnetic north, a real phenomenon known as agonic variation that has confused sailors for centuries when they forgot to correct for it. None of this requires anything mysterious. It just requires busy shipping lanes, unpredictable weather, and the same rate of human mistakes found anywhere else on Earth. Not every theory floated over the years held up this well, and some of the more scientific-sounding explanations turned out to be just as shaky as the talk of Atlantis once researchers actually tested them. The science-sounding theories that did not hold up. One popular theory claims that pockets of frozen methane trapped under the seafloor, called methane hydrates, can suddenly release huge bubbles of gas that reduce the density of the water above them, causing ships to lose buoyancy and sink straight down without warning. It sounds convincing on paper, and methane hydrate deposits genuinely do exist off the coast of the southeastern United States. The problem is the timing. Studies by the United States Geological Survey found no evidence of any significant methane release from the seafloor in this region within at least the past 15,000 years, meaning the theory cannot explain a single modern shipwreck. Magnetic anomalies get brought up constantly too. The idea that some unknown magnetism in the area interferes with instruments. No scientific survey has ever found any unusual magnetic field in the region, beyond the normal, well-documented compass variation mentioned earlier, a variation that also exists in plenty of other spots around the world with no mysterious reputation attached. A theory called the vile vortices claimed 12 mysterious hotspots existed around the globe, evenly spaced to form a strange geometric pattern with the Bermuda Triangle as one point. When Couchet examined this claim directly, he found the researchers had picked locations first based on vague suspicion, then searched for any incident at all to justify calling each spot mysterious, before connecting the dots to manufacture a pattern that was never really there to begin with. Once methane, magnetism, and made-up geometry all failed to hold up, only one real question was left standing, and it had nothing to do with monsters or vortices at all. Why nobody ever launched a real search for answers. The honest truth is that a formal government-backed expedition to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery never really existed, because the agencies responsible for that stretch of ocean never believed there was a mystery large enough to justify one. The Coast Guard, the Navy, and NOAA had access to accident records the whole time and consistently found nothing statistically unusual worth investigating further. What actually happened instead was quieter and less dramatic than any television special. A librarian wrote letters. Insurance companies checked their own claims data. Meteorologists studied storm patterns and rogue wave formation that apply to any ocean, not just this one. Piece by piece, over about 2 decades, the real explanation assembled itself out of paperwork, rather than a dramatic voyage into the unknown. Ships and planes never stopped crossing the Bermuda Triangle either, not even for a single day. Cruise lines run regular routes straight through it. Cargo ships cross it constantly. Commercial flights fly over it every hour without a second thought from passengers or pilots. The only thing that actually stopped was the flow of new mysterious stories, because once the old cases got checked against real records, there was very little strange material left for new authors to work with. 2 real tragedies from the 20th century still remain permanently unsolved in the sense that no wreckage has ever been recovered, and that unanswered piece is exactly what keeps the legend alive today. What still sits unfound at the bottom of the ocean. Despite everything science has ruled out, both the USS Cyclops and the planes of Flight 19 remain physically missing to this day. No confirmed wreckage from either has ever been located and verified by the Navy or any recognized research institution, despite multiple search expeditions over the decades using increasingly advanced sonar and diving technology. This is not actually as strange as it sounds. The Atlantic Ocean along the U.S. eastern seaboard reaches depths of thousands of feet in many spots, and locating a relatively small object like a single aircraft or even a mid-sized ship across that much dark, current-swept seafloor is an enormous technical challenge, even with modern equipment. Explorer James Delgado, who has spent decades searching shipwrecks, has described the Cyclops as one of the last truly unresolved mysteries in naval history, simply because of how difficult the search itself remains, not because the cause of its loss is unclear. The manganese ore cargo theory remains the leading scientific explanation for the Cyclops, and pilot disorientation combined with equipment failure remains the leading explanation for Flight 19. Yet both explanations exist without the satisfaction of a confirmed wreck to point to. That gap between a solid scientific explanation and an unrecovered physical wreck is really the entire story of the Bermuda Triangle in one sentence, and it explains why the legend never fully dies, even after being thoroughly debunked. Why the mystery refuses to go away. Couchet pointed to a simple reason people still believe. The Alaska Triangle has recorded more disappearances than the Bermuda Triangle ever did, yet nobody blames aliens for that one. The difference was never the water. It was timing, storytelling, and a few best-selling authors who published at the right cultural moment. People are drawn to unexplained stories more than weather reports, even when the weather report is the real answer. Every ship that vanishes eventually gets explained by storms, mechanical failure, or human error, and this ocean was never any different once someone checked. It is exactly as dangerous and exactly as safe as every other busy stretch of water on Earth. Ships and planes still cross it daily. Nobody stopped exploring it because nobody ever needed a special mission. All it took was someone willing to read the paperwork. If this video gave you something, subscribing takes 3 seconds, and it helps us keep making content like this.